Good afternoon. This is Dan Early, Chief Engineer with OriginClear and Modular Water Systems, coming to you live from inside one of our latest EveraBOX modular equipment buildings. This is for a customer of ours that we're soon to deliver a complete package of EveraTreat wastewater treatment system with our modular equipment building. Scheduled to ship that out here in the next week or two to the contractor that's going to do the final installation at the project site. Just want to share a quick walkthrough. I'm going to show the audience what the inside of one of our modular equipment buildings looks like. And this is a larger, bigger brother version of the EveraBOX unit that we just recently delivered for the Beaver Falls Municipal Authority customer in Pennsylvania. As you may recall, we just did a press release and announcement on that, and that was a system, a much smaller system, about a 20-foot long structurally reinforced thermoplastic building. This one, what I'm in right now, is going to be a much larger version. This is our 40-foot building, and this one's kind of unique in that this building actually is compartmentalized. It means that it has multiple rooms in it. We have, and I'm going to flip the screen around and do a walkthrough, but here is, on one side, we have our modular equipment building with its office space. This is the space where the operator will function on a daily basis. Got a service sink, lab sink. We have all our supply cabinetry. Actually, this is an HVAC air-conditioned space with that PTAC unit through the wall. And this gives the equipment facility the ability to use a modular factory assembled equipment building as a complement to their wastewater treatment package. This avoids building the sticks and bricks custom erected wastewater treatment plant building at a facility. Much more efficient, much quicker, very fast delivery, very rapid installation, and it's an integral component to our wastewater treatment systems. So what you'll see some of our aeration skids, some of the technical equipment used for the wastewater treatment process, the electrical control panel, it's in its final state of sub-assembly or final assembly, emergency eye wash station, courtesy sinks, chemical feed systems, and that type of thing. So this is very typical of what you would see when we ship out a modular wastewater treatment facility. It would be the influent lift stations, it would be the package treatment equipment tank systems, and the modular EveraBOX equipment system. So a quick walkthrough. Again, as I mentioned, this one here is probably within about 3 or 4 days of being complete, and it will be shipped out to our customer in West Virginia.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to the CEO briefing. Water the Blue Gold. June 8th, and briefing number 214 with the world's new water network, moving along very fast. I'm super excited about developments. Let's see what we got lined up for you tonight. Now, this is a cool graph. I keep coming back to wealth disparity. And so I subscribe to a newsletter called CB Insights. Very cool. It's got, for example, it's talking about the 1.7 million downloads by this generation AI in 1 week, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really great newsletter. And he always ends the newsletter with, "I love you." I take it. I love it. I love it. But he has a chart, which is actually animated. I could not figure out how to screen grab it. So this is 1971, where you've got a lot of people on the left-hand side, not a pretty decent middle class, but the upper lower class is still strong as well. Now he thinks that people's incomes are moving to the right. Others see it and only see the 200K segment going up. What do you see? Well, let's take a look. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at a fresh. Okay. 1971. Here we go. Middle income. And now watch it move 81. Now look at how the middle class sags and the 200K plus just goes up, up, up. I think it's a pretty scary graph, if you ask my opinion. Plus, of course, 200K was worth a heck of a lot more in 71 than it is today. It was perhaps double or 3 times as much by the power of compound interest. it just seems to me that there's just no middle ground, that as you move from over the years, everything flattens out and everybody's sort of at the low end. And then you get this huge jump in 200K plus. Really interesting. It's not a great sign. The good news is that we are dealing with an opportunity for, we would call water is the people's asset. We're focused on that. And it's resonating beautifully with people because they really want to know what are they going to invest in? And water is now an investable asset. And we are the only ones making it possible to invest directly in water systems with the ability to put a lien on the systems if you're not getting paid your royalty to regular investors. Everybody else is going with funds and so forth. So that is, I think, a huge differentiator, and it's very much in line with how we want to, like I say, according to the CEO of this company, Clear, KLIR, he says the first trillionaire will be in water. I'd rather we have, 100,000 multimillionaires. That's what I'd rather have, right? So that's, to me, a better way to go. That's my soapbox for the night. OriginClear in the news. Companies Digest featured an article. Water tech has the power to transform the water industry in America. It talks about the story you've heard me say before, that I found a slow-moving giant, and then I started working on, how to disrupt it. And we learned eventually that being an innovation hub was the best way to go. And of course, we incubated both water on demand and modular water, which are now one. Obviously, the infrastructure story, which and the expansion plan to have financial hubs across the globe that replicate the water on demand network that we build in North America. And of course, the amazing breakthrough systems with Dan Early. And finally, the pay-as-you-go financial system, which is water on demand. And if we reduce the burden of industry and agriculture by helping them take responsibility for their water, we believe this is a future we could have. That's our long-term goal: clean, safe, and abundant water for all. Thank you, Melissa Mores. That's an excellent story. Really cool. Oh my God. We have a new saying. This came from Jason Hurst, and he calls modular water systems installation pressing the easy button. Let's see. I tell you, we're going to use this as a tagline for modular water systems. Check it out.
I'm a consulting engineer here at Columbia Engineering. I've been here for 26 years. I head up all of our company's land development work throughout the Southeast. We've been in business for 60 years. We're a full-service engineering firm, so occasionally we have need for adding lift stations to some of our development. Ordinarily, when you have sewage from a development, it drains via gravity to a gravity sewer system. Oftentimes, that's not possible on sites because the elevation of the sewer, for instance, may be too high. And so to resolve that problem, the sewage drains into a lift station, which then pumps it to the gravity system. It allows a site that may otherwise not be developable for a reasonable cost. And we really just weren't satisfied with the level of service that we were getting from some of those designers. The designers seemed to just sort of cobble together these lift stations using old school technology. Required really a lot of work on our end to coordinate everything. And then we'd get through the construction process, and oftentimes the items that the engineer had spec'd maybe weren't readily available, resulting in change orders and so forth. I was introduced to Dan Early and his group with Progressive Water. He just really had this cool concept of a turnkey package where they included all of the design and produced a modular plant that was shipped to the construction site, built to the spec. All the contractor had to do is dig a hole, pour some concrete, set it, and plug everything in. So we gave Dan's group a shot on a project we had down in Panhandle. I really liked Dan's idea of look, I'm just going to take this problem, I'm going to run with it and give Columbia the easy button. And he and his group certainly did that. Dan and his group have a knack for taking very complicated ideas and putting them in layman's terms for our clients who are ultimately paying the bill and don't necessarily understand the distinction of the different types of lift stations and costs involved. Honestly, I was amazed. I was really looking for the easy button so that we can focus on doing what we do best, which is not lift station design or managing our consultants. Concrete has a design life of about 10 to 20 years and then requires some pretty significant maintenance to go in there and refurbish that wet well area. The modular water system product is a polyethylene tank, and it has a 100-year design life. And so that's just one of the many distinctions between a traditional type of system and the modular water system. I think as news of this spreads and it becomes more widespread, and public utilities but also private landowners realize the affordability of this product, the great construction and reliability of it, and the ease of installation, I think it's going to become much more prevalent. We're just very pleased with the service that we got, the responsiveness that we got, no headache, and we'll be using them in the future.
Pressing the easy button. He didn't quite say it in those words, but I like, that's kind of what we got out of it. Like, press the easy button. That's kind of like our concept here. And in the survey afterwards, tell us what you think. We'd be very interested in your take on it, on that tagline for Modular Water Systems. Earlier this week, I was on a podcast called Entrepreneur Talks, and the amazing Yola Bastos interviewed me. She did a great job. As you can tell, she's done 15 seasons so far. And so this is episode 3. Let's take a look. It's this. We excerpted it. It was much longer than, but the podcasts tend to run long because I think the podcast hosts tend to get interested in, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, and so forth and so on. And so we have a good story. What can I say? Here we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Entrepreneur Talks podcast. How are you, Riggs?
I'm fantastic, Yola. It's such a pleasure. Much earlier where I am, of course, on the west coast of Florida.
So as you know, I'm in London, so it's 6 p.m., 6:30, exactly. Riggs, tell me, to start, 3 words that you describe yourself.
Well, it all depends what's happening at the particular moment. But I like to think of myself as today, now, whatever it was in the past, as a risk taker who is not reckless. Because you have to have courage and take risks, but you have to take responsibility for what,
yes,
for the consequence to other people. And this is something that took me many years to learn. Did not start out that way.
Yes. Risk taker, not reckless. And I need another one.
And willing to learn from mistakes. Mistakes is how I learn, and it's how everybody learns. But the key is, how quickly can you learn, right? That's the key.
Acknowledge, be conscious that is a mistake, and then learn from it.
There's a very good quote by Edna St. Vincent Millay where she says, history doesn't repeat itself. It's the same damn thing over and over again. And I think that's very true. We're not learning as humankind. We're not learning from our mistakes. We're tending to repeat them endlessly. It starts with yourself, and then you have to spread it where we do evolve. I think it's so important.
So you mentioned as well that you are a risk taker. So you've done a lot of enjoy, like jump into something like, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm doing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I've had my adventures, including, being a sailor on the open ocean as a captain, actually. All these interesting things, learning about as I was doing. But for the last, 14 years, I've really focused on this company of mine. 10 years ago, we became specialized in this topic of water, which is, people know water is so important, but they don't know what to do about it. It's like, okay, water is important. 6,000 children die each day from water diseases. And what do I do? How can I, besides giving to water.org, which is great, what else can I do? And that's really what we're focusing on today. We, of course, are made of water. We are constantly drinking water.
Right.
There's a lot of concern about tap water these days with the forever chemicals. And really what's been going on is that big central infrastructure that was built decades ago is starting to fall apart through lack of funding. And so you have an old system that's sort of not really doing its job, and people are having to take care of themselves more. Now, by people, I don't mean individuals, I mean industry and agriculture. And the reason for my saying that is 90% of all water use is by industry and agriculture. So If we focus on that and really get industry and agriculture to not burden the system so much, pull them away and make them do their job, then the 10% of the humans can get cheaper water, maybe even free. Like in Ireland, water is free, so why not? If humans are only 10% of the load, then let's get rid of the industry users, which they're happy to do because they get a better deal, and I can explain that. So that is the purpose of our mission, really, is to help commercial users, business users, take care of their water problems themselves and do better that way, and help the overall grid so that in the end, the 10% of humans can do better.
And how do you do that? Sounds really good, but it might be very complex.
In concept, it's simple. There's two parts. The first part is technology. If you're going to help, for example, a brewery to clean their own water, maybe reuse it to make more beer,
right?
Then you have to downsize the big water machines from the central systems down to, a 400 square foot or 100 square foot type footprint in the brewery. And so the first challenge is how to downsize the systems, which we've done successfully with our patented product line, Modular Water Systems. And then the other side is something we've been working on since the pandemic began, because that was a trigger for us. And that is called water on demand. And that's where people can do all this without using their precious capital. It's water as a service. So the same way that they were getting their water treated by the city and they just paid on the meter, they can continue with us without having, they get a machine at the location that's funded by our investors, and they continue to pay on the meter. They're very happy. They didn't have to pay $1 million cash. So that is, again, you have to have the technology, but also you have to enable people to do it without giant investments of money. And that is our new thing called water on demand.
Now I'm thinking about UK. I'm thinking about where I live, the way I need to pay my bills, the water bills. How can you go on top of these companies?
We're not proposing to replace the incoming fresh water, because except in very unusual cases where people have to take water from a well, typically the city sends you good water and you need to maybe filter it, yes. But the big problem is once an industry user makes the water dirty, and I'm not talking about individual cases of homes, I'm talking about businesses that like chip fabrication, pharmaceuticals, energy users, all these, they generate food and beverage, they generate lots of dirty water. Where does that go? Well, what they're running into more and more is the cities and the counties are saying, we can't take your water. And they're like, well, what do I do? And they're like trucking it to the next county and stuff like that, right? So it's very tough. And it's a silent problem. Nobody's talking about it much. Users have a big problem. And we are helping them today with their own system, exactly, to treat their own water.
I got it now. Oh, wow. And it's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this, because I never heard about that. They need to get rid of their water and then they dropping on the other counting, for example. And it's a silent problem.
Yes, because of course the cities don't want to admit that they don't have enough capacity, but they are underfunded. That's not their fault.
Right.
The local city council or whatever, I mean, they just didn't get enough money from the national government or whatever. Don't really want to admit it, but they're delighted when all of a sudden a user like, I don't know, a brewery or a car manufacturer or whatever decides to take care of their own water. That's a big burden taken away from the city. And here's the beautiful part about it is, in America, and I think in the UK also, recycling rates are very low. People are not reusing water. The highest recycling number is in Israel. Almost 90% of their water is recycled. The second in the world, strangely enough, is Spain. They're recycling 20% of their water. US is recycling 1%, and I think UK is around 2 or 3%. Well, that's not enough, because we have droughts, we have water shortages. I don't know if you know, but your reservoirs in the UK were privatized and are not doing very well. The reservoirs are in poor shape. So it's important to use water more than once. And so, for example, in a brewery, If I have my own water treatment system, it takes 7 to 8 liters of water to make 1 liter of beer. Okay, now
Right.
those 7 to 8 liters are now dirty. If I clean them on the spot, I can reuse them, for example, to wash down my equipment. I'm not saying make beer with it.
Yes, yes, yes. But I understood. When I dry my clothes, and it is a container inside the machine that keeps the water, and then when it's full, I need to throw away. But I don't throw away. I keep and I clean the floor.
There you
I drop
go. I love it.
I just keep that water to my bucket, and then I clean my house.
As an individual, you're doing the right thing. Our mission really is to deal with the 90% because, you always want the larger market to make the largest change happen. By taking these industrial and agriculture users off the grid, we're essentially becoming a private utility, and we're privatizing the system. But as I say, we're not privatizing the fresh water. They still get their fresh water from the city. We don't want to touch that.
Right.
Unless we have to. Because a lot of people don't like, in America, for example, Nestle is using up a lot of water that people feel that it's their right. And why is Nestle making bottled water with their water and paying almost nothing for it? That's a big scandal. But that's not what we're doing. What we are doing is treating, people forget that 80% of all sewage is never treated in the world. It's dumped. And that's a big problem. Now, in the UK and the US, we treat most of our dirty water. In fact, I remember going 2 summers in Italy in Latium area, and there was a beautiful volcano lake with fields all around it. And normally, if you didn't take care of all the fertilizer, the fields would send the fertilizer into the water and it would turn into algae, turn green. That water was crystal clear. You could drink it because the Italian authorities were very careful about the runoff. And so where there's, good practices, and EU is pretty good, America is so-so, but then you have places like Bangladesh or even Mexico where there's very poor water treatment. And all that ends up in the same ocean. It's like we're all sharing the same planet, right? So when somebody dumps bad water in the ocean, eventually it makes our ocean for everybody. It's not unlimited. So businesses know it because they're getting penalties and fines for not treating their water properly. So they want to know that they can take care of it. We are solving that problem. It's this new initiative called Water on Demand. Now, OriginClear, my original company, is more like an incubator or a godfather to these new companies being created. And that's what I love about my job, is that I have this small public company that's been around for a long time. It is creating companies that, just like children, are going to be better than mine.
It's really rewarding. I was about to ask you, is any other companies like you, but you already just answered.
No, but it's a really good question, because this concept of water as a service is not unique, but here's the difference. The other players, you have to be a large fund or, Morgan Stanley, or you have to be a venture capitalist to invest. We are the only company that is enabling everyday investors like you to invest in water systems through an investment in Water on Demand. So building up Water on Demand over an OriginClear, because Water on Demand is still in formation and it's still doing its thing. You have a brewery. I give you a system for nothing up front. I say, you can pay me as you go. Well, somebody's got to pay for that machine. And so we have investors who come in and they get a percentage of the profits. It's kind of like an oil well type of partnership, but with water, which is new.
Yeah.
And we're the only people doing it for everyday investors. If you go to originclear.com and you click Invest Now, it'll explain everything about it. And you can become a water investor just as if it was an oil well, but it's water.
Anyone like me as well, I can be an investor on Water on Demand. That's great.
Exactly. I was at a naming ceremony in the weekend, and there was a little baby, and they were giving the baby a name. Well, there's similar things going on. OriginClear is still helping this new company, Water on Demand, become a real player. And so we're doing all of the funding and administration and marketing for it. I love that. I love this role because we're not building ourselves up. We're building up these specialized companies that are going to really make a real change, and we're going to keep doing it.
As you mentioned that I can go and be an investor in terms of money, how do you explain when it comes to invest on this project?
Well, of course, in the US, there's two levels. One is what's called accredited investors, and that's the people who make $200,000 a year, or with their spouse $300,000, fine, and they can invest anything they want. And then there's people who are not, and for them, occasionally we have crowdfunding offerings. We just finished a preview of our crowdfunding, and we will restart it, and probably in the fall, and that enables somebody to invest as little as $1,000 and get stock in Water on Demand. So we want to cater to everyone, because I am a strong believer that this should not be about the 1%. I'm so tired of this, the 1%, or the almost the 0.1%, is keeps more and more and more and more and more money, and the middle class is going less and less and less and less. And where do we invest? We don't know, but there's an opportunity to do that with this new water tech space that is super exciting, because, Yola, anytime that a monopoly breaks up, so we had a government monopoly on water for 100 years. Now it's starting to break up. Well, that creates all kinds of markets. Remember when telephones became deregulated, and it became all kinds of telephone companies plus the internet all came out of the breakup of these monopoly, in the US, AT&T, in France, PTT, different, the different government monopolies, different monopolies got broken up, and it became commercialized. And that created so much industry, and we think that's happening with water. And we want our regular people to invest in water and get a benefit, and not just the 0.1%, because I'm tired of that.
So I have here something on my notes about Biden infrastructure bill.
$1.2 trillion. Water's share of that was $55 billion, which is less than 1 year's backlog, because the water industry is underfunded by about $100 billion a year. So guess what? This massive infrastructure bill did nothing for water. It was helping rural areas get broadband, but I think that water is more important than broadband, right? And so what the message is that government is just not paying attention to water. We have to take care of it ourselves. But that's good news, because I don't know about you, but when government gets involved, they mostly get involved to restrict things. So if they're like, no, you go ahead, do your thing, I'm like, great, I can go help these businesses, and they'll have an easy time of it, and water will get better, and all the investors that we bring will benefit, and hopefully they can pass on those royalties to their sons and grandsons, just like Orwell. And we can do all that because government is not really trying to figure it out. Government, I believe, tends to fix the problems of the past. What
you are doing for the present and the future.
Exactly.
The services that your company or this project, I call project, but it's a business, right? The Water on Demand is doing is only in America right now. Are you planning to be worldwide? What is the vision?
Okay, so here's what we plan to do, is to build the Water on Demand network in America. Once we have it set up, is to replicate it. So let's say we do a deal with a financial organization in Dubai, and one in Singapore, and one in perhaps London. But somebody in the Middle East can take care of water on demand for the Middle East. So, UAE, Saudi Arabia, all the countries, because already Israel's doing a very good job. One of the reasons why people don't realize it, why there's peace between Israel and Jordan, and also Egypt, is because of water, right? Because Israel has water, and that's a huge factor. And so, for example, Israel supplies water to Jordan. So are they going to fight? No, it's water, right? Water is life. So I believe that water can be a unifying factor in a region like Middle East that has so many tensions and so many people fighting. Well, if everybody is becoming interdependent for water, then over time it creates lasting relationships, because if you're sending me water, I'm not gonna blow you up. You're sending me
Yeah,
water,
that's
right?
right. Yes. Yes. If you can see the change, you're not going to be doing damage. You're not going to be damaging anything. That's really good. You're doing an amazing job, Rix. Well done. Thank you so much. And I hope one day, if I'm still here, I will be able to see that happening in this country. Because not just thinking about the country, but thinking about the world is a huge thing that needs to be done, actually. Everything you've been doing and is still in a such short or small amount, but needs to be rapidly shared.
Mm-hmm. We got to all get together, and it's good news that we can actually, um, water is becoming, the way we're doing it is becoming the people's asset, right? And so we are taking our money to pay for these water systems that we put out as what, for service, with regular investor money. We don't want to take the big funds money, because when you take money from somebody, that's who you owe loyalty and favors to, right? Well, I want to
Yeah.
owe my loyalty to the regular investor, not to BlackRock. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
prefer the regular investor. That's me.
Be connected, because this is a revolution. That's why it's water revolution, transforming the industry. Now I got it. Love it. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best. Continue to do the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to your listeners. And let's check in again in a few months and see where we've gone with it, right?
Good idea. We will be back again with Rix. So thank you so much. And I see you next week. Take care.
She is super cool, Yola, because what was great about Yola is she was like, okay, break it down for me, right? And she was like, I'm a regular person, which she is, and so it was really useful that way. All right, I have a question from Marcus Walker. Will OriginClear Water on Demand one day become one institution with one ticker symbol, or will they stay separate to individual companies? The whole concept of OriginClear is as an incubator, creating companies that are launched. So the design of OriginClear is to be this launch pad. And we've now incubated two companies, Modular Water, starting in 2018, when literally, was it June 26, 2018, we signed on Dan Early, and that's all we had. And we put a lot of money into it and built them up, and they almost tripled their revenues from 21 to 22. They're continuing to do so well. And we also launched Water on Demand starting in 2021. And now we've merged Modular Water with Water on Demand to give Water on Demand technology capabilities and evaluation, et cetera. Now, Water on Demand is on a path to being its own company. And OriginClear remains the godfather. That's our job, is to keep incubating companies and launching them into the world. I hope that answers the question. Oh, Keith Rutten. BlackRock can jump into a lake if there's any water left in it. What you are doing is good news. Isn't anyone interested in good news these days? Well, they are. And more people love our message, especially that we are focused on the regular investor. And it's a story that resonates and that people appreciate. And I personally love the concept. It moves beyond technology to, well, how are people going to prosper? Regular people. That's super important. Freewheeling Discussion. Mr. Ken Berenger is in the house.
How we doing? So what was interesting was this is a woman who was coming at it from really a first blush and was able to capture the elements of it pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think early on, the thing we had is we had this great big idea, and it took a really long time to kind of explain it all, but we've distilled it down to, to that kind of simple. I don't know if it's going to be as simple as easy button, although I do love that, right? But
Well, for modular water,
yeah,
pushing the easy button is like kind
Yeah.
of says the whole word, right? Now we'll see. And I really am serious that I want people to go to the survey, fill out your Zoom survey, because it tells us a lot. Take a moment to do that. But looks like at least you, possibly me as well, will be shooting one more new to the street.
yes,
And that's the end of the 6-month contract. We'll see where we go from there. But it's
Right.
going to be very useful to kind of, recap how OriginClear is making these companies work. And so it is still, birthing water on demand. It's providing all the professional services, it's providing the funding, the private placement that's been going on is an OriginClear private placement
right.
that will provide funds that water on demand can tap, but it's being done on our platform.
Right. And what's more interesting is, when Marcus asked the question, OriginClear becomes more valuable by having a big stake in these in the float of these companies as they move into where they're exposed to the real money, right? But not only that, OriginClear now, these companies are raising money on their own. OriginClear is simply providing all these shared services, which, it's not brick, it's not mortar. It's the ROIs on services like these is just time, effort, knowledge, that sort of thing. So really phenomenal ROIs when you're just, you pay an attorney for you do pay, look, so yes, he pays for 4 years of law school, right? And you're paying him 1,000 times per hour what he paid for law school, right? Obviously, we're not going to gouge ourselves, but the idea is that we've built this really efficient and creative machinery on how to provide all of these services to a public company. So now you basically take care of IR, PR, billing, you take care of fundraising and all that other stuff. And if it can do that with multiple companies, we make a comparison a lot of times that what was it, Yahoo, that was saved by owning Alibaba? Yahoo, right?
Yeah,
But-
they had like a huge percentage of Alibaba, like 20 or 25%, and
Right.
it was far exceeded the value of Yahoo itself.
Well, that's my point, right? But they didn't, in other words, they didn't earn money off Alibaba. They made, there was that one time, it was that big giant asset on the balance sheet.
Sure.
So being able to being able to own 10 or 20% of a bunch of big companies, and you're billing each of these big companies for vital services, which have, super high ROIs or super high margins, if you will. That's a really good model as well. That's a very efficient model.
Amen to that. So with that, I wanted to just say that if you want to know the real story, talk to Ken Berenger. Just schedule a call, oc.gold/Ken. You'll be talking to Charles, our appointment setter, and he will get you set up. Marcus Walker says, thank you. You can also send an email to investor@originclear.com, or you can, God, does anybody call anymore? But anyway, you can call. There's the phone number. So, I like where we're at right now. I like how basically water on demand is 3 parts. The first part, which is currently being done by OriginClear still, is the funding of the water on demand capital, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is Modular Water Systems, which is already doing well and making money. And they're on track to make their forecast for 2023, which is about $4 million. So they made over $1 million in Q1. And remember that for the entirety of 2022, they did something like 2.75 million. So they're cranking. And then the third part is the water on demand network itself, which is the delivery of water as a service. And so this 3 section is where water on demand is going. It doesn't exist. If you go to waterondemand.net, it's a brochure site still. And that's why OriginClear is still doing the hosting of, for example, the building the capital, and that's where it's at. And Ken and his team are doing amazing. I'm not going to mention names, but we just acquired a wonderful, wonderful team member who has just really moved into as a coordinator, but really has the talent to do a wide
He's
array.
watching, so he's watching, so he knows who you're talking about.
Well, he knows.
Yeah, he knows.
But what I'm saying is that the team is fleshing out, and what I've learned is that you really want a lot of, not a lot, a few good men and women. That's what you want. And so I'm very pleased that the team is coming together because we are starting to get momentum, and I love that. Well, with that, I wanted to thank everyone for coming on board tonight. And Ken, you're just doing amazing things. Keep it up. Devin behind you, and our new, not yet named
Secret weapon.
Our corporate development coordinator, because we've got so many initiatives. After a while, we're like, what are we doing now?
Right.
So he's corralled it all.
Squirrel? Yeah.
He's corralled it all.
And very quickly. So now we've got it all in one box. Now we can really, that's really now is where the work begins, right? When all of, you have all these brilliant ideas floating around the ether, you've got to draw them down. You've got to get them into a place where they're in front of you. You can work on them. And now it's going to get interesting.
Yeah. So Elon Musk said two things. One, at the Caltech commencement one year, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, he said it's very easy to make a PowerPoint. It's much harder to make a car. And then more recently, he said it's one thing to make one car. It's another thing to scale it up into a car company, right? So there's three levels. I mean, 2 levels really: idea to the prototype, which is where we're at with Water on Demand, and then from prototype to the actual.
We did that. We went from idea to prototype in about 18 months. Would you say?
Yeah. And there's no question about it.
I mean, that's I was thinking about that the other day. I go, wait a minute. We went from a like that to application, actually execution in under 2 years. That's to me, I'm like, wow, that was pretty good.
Yeah, but I want to throw some cold water on that because we don't yet have a pilot site. So,
I get it.
But here's the thing: Modular Water is now scaling, right?
Yes.
They were, they were at, what was it, 200,000?
They were at almost zero, right? Yeah.
Here, I'll just pull up the chart because it's really interesting, because I do these things on the fly, and people are like, "Oh, what are you doing now?" But let's take a look at what this means. And sorry if you guys started to leave, because we have this way of stretching things out. So if you look at Modular Water, that's the lighter blue. They did $232,000 in 2020. This is why Ken and I were like, oh my gosh, we didn't know that it was going to take off. It was actually less than the year before, right? Year before was 400,000. Then in 2020, during COVID, it went down actually. This is revenues. This is not even profits. But then wildly, even while we figured out Water on Demand, Modular Water started taking off. They did $1 million in 2021, 2.75 million in 2022. And then now they have a forecast of 4 million, which they're on track to make because they did over 1 million in Q1. So, and you can see they're continuing to grow. I think they'll grow faster than that. But the dark blue is where Water on Demand starts taking off. And then, of course, if you look at gross profits, again, they were, $1,000 gross profits in 2019, negative 22,000 in 2020, and then finally started moving up. And here they are, 800,000 gross profits, which is about, 27%. Well, the Q1 gross profit margin was 27%, which is very good. And finally, if you look at net profits here, again, very negative in 2019, 2020. Modular Water Systems cost us a lot of money over time in investment, roughly $1 million from my estimate. And then, as you can see, in 2023, we got the combination with Water on Demand, which takes it down. But because Modular Water is forecast to do about $300,000, it comes out just barely profitable, $98,000, and then it starts to move, and then we get a hockey stick as Water on Demand really takes off. And this is why Water on Demand is so important, because It's finance and it's services. Services are much higher margin than selling equipment. That machine that you put at that brewery, that's charged by on the meter, that money is again and again and again and again, as opposed to being a one-time $1 million sale. Ken's made this point before. It becomes, millions of dollars over the life of the service contract. And the customer's happy because he had full service the entire time. It's just like I'm paying for Microsoft Office on a monthly basis. It's far more than I used to pay. I used to pay $125 for a copy. Now I pay, what is it, $14.99 a month per user, which is in 10 months, it's more than the cost of the entire office. But I'm happy because they're constantly maintaining it, making it better. And that's where the beauty of services.
That's my favorite graph, because you can see that the manufacturing profit becomes a much, much smaller and smaller and smaller piece of the pie, whereas the money and services, just real quick, I was telling you that, when I come down to Florida, we're going to go on the boat and all this stuff. Freedom Boat Club. It's boating as a service, right? So it's way expensive than buying a boat until the boat breaks. Then all of a sudden, this is like the greatest thing ever, because you're like, oh, it's broken. Come take it, right? There's no docking. There's no maintenance. There's no, so it really, everything is, as you said a long time ago, everything is turning to as a service. And when it's the most vital asset on earth, necessary for all life on earth, it's probably a good thing to monetize.
I think you're 100% right. I love the space we're in. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your fidelity, and we look forward to continuing to give you all the news about what we're doing, because we are the most transparent public company in America.
Good
Thank
night.
you, everyone. Have a good weekend. And thank you, Ken. Good night.